So welcome to today's class. Today we'll continue our discussion from the last class on Fourier transform. So let us just first have a recap of what we discussed in the last class. So in the last class we discussed about Fourier series, and we discussed that Fourier series is applicable when our signal is or our wave form is periodic, and then we discussed Fourier transform, and then we also discussed the notion of low frequency and high frequency with respect to images, and then we at the end we discussed 1D Fourier transform. And whatever we discussed, or the summary of our last class discussion, can be summarized with the help of this slide, which says that if any given function is represented in time or spatial domain, we can have its equivalent representation in frequency domain. And what we exactly mean by having a representation in frequency domain, this basically says that for given function ft, we can find out some set of sine and cosine waves. If we sum them together, then whatever you get from the right side is equal to actually the left side. So we can say that the right side is equivalent representation of the function given on the left side. Okay. In this particular example, we have a square wave. We want to represent this in terms of frequencies. So when we get its equivalent representation in terms of frequencies or in terms of sine waves or cosine waves, we get this representation. We say that ft is equal to sine 2 pi f naught t plus 1 by 3 sine 2 pi 3 f naught t plus 1 by 5 sine 2 pi 5 f naught t, and so on. Okay. So if you have to tell the equivalent representation of ft in frequency domain, we just need to tell what are the frequencies that we are using on the right side. Okay. And one more thing actually we need to tell along with the frequencies that I think I did not mention in the last class is this coefficient. So you have to tell what is the frequency and what is its coefficient. So for example, for f naught the coefficient is 1. For here 3 f naught the coefficient is 1 by 3. For frequency 5 f naught, the coefficient is 1 by 5. So when we want the equivalent representation of any given signal in frequency domain, its equivalent will be represented in terms of sine and cosine wave, but to express it, we just need to tell two things. First, what are the frequencies with the help of which you are making the sine and cosine waves, and second, what are their coefficients. So for example, for f naught, you see the coefficient is 1 here. Similarly, for 3 f naught, you have the coefficient 1 by 3. I mean, you see this is equivalent to 1 by 3, and so on. Okay. So ultimately, our goal in Fourier transform is to get given a function or a signal in spatial domain. Our objective is to get this representation where we want to find out what are the frequencies and what are their coefficients. Okay. So now let us continue. In the last class we discussed 1D Fourier transform. Now let us see the 2D case for the Fourier transform, and again this we are discussing for the continuous domain. 1D case that we discussed in the last class, that was also for the continuous domain, and this is also for the continuous domain. So let us say a function fxy is given. Fxy is a 2D function which is given in continuous domain, and we want to find out its Fourier transform. So its Fourier transform is given by using this formula. If the function is fxy, its Fourier transform is represented here using this notation, capital F and u and v are the frequencies. So capital F uv, this function gives you the equivalent representation of fxy in Fourier domain or in the frequency domain. And this is equal to double summation minus infinity to infinity fxy e to the power minus j2 pi ux plus vy dx dy. If you compare this formula with the previous formula for 1D case, you will find that it is very similar. So in case of, since this is a 2D case, in place of having single summation, we are using double summation or double integration. And our functions, they were defined using just one variable. We said fx. Now it is a 2D function, so we are saying fxy. And similarly here also, earlier only j2 pi ux was there, but now this minus j2 pi ux was there earlier. Now minus j2 pi uy has been also added, right? So it's very easy to remember this formula if you just compare this with the previous formula. Okay, and the 2D function or 2D Fourier transform of 2D Fourier transform is very important for us, because we are going to discuss the transform for the 2D images, and 2D images are nothing but they are the 2D functions, right? Where you can assume that x and y represents the row and column for the pixels, and fxy tells you the brightness value. Okay, so since 2D functions are, images can be represented in terms of 2D functions, so this particular case is going to be applicable for us. Okay, and now for every Fourier transform, we need to also have the inverse Fourier transform, because when you take your signal to the Fourier domain, whatever operations you want to perform there, you can perform, but again you have to bring it back to the original domain, so that again it can be perceived by the human, or otherwise also the original representation was in spatial domain. So after doing the operations also, its original, we want the representation in the original domain. So that is why for Fourier transform we also need the inverse Fourier transform. So inverse Fourier transform we discussed for 1D case. Now the inverse Fourier transform we need for the 2D case as well. So from if FUV, which is the Fourier representation of the given signal, if it is given, then with the help of this formula we can get its equivalent representation in the spatial domain. Okay, and again this is a 2D case, so the integration is from we are using double integration from minus infinity to infinity, and if you compare this formula with the 1D case, again you will find that it is very, very similar. In place of one variable, only you have two variables here. In case of fxy, fx you have fxy, and in case of fuv, fu you have fuv here. And this term earlier we had only j2 pi ux. Now you have here j2 pi ui as well, vy as well, along with j2 pi ux. Okay, so this formula is again very similar to the inverse Fourier transform of 1D case. Okay, as I said that we are going to use the Fourier transform for our images. So now our images are not the continuous functions; they are discrete functions. So till now we have discussed Fourier transform for 1D and 2D cases. Both were for continuous functions, but since now images are discrete functions, we need to know what are the equivalent transforms for 1D as well as for 2D. When our function is not a continuous function, when it is a discrete function, right? So for the discrete function, we are going to study discrete Fourier transform. So discrete Fourier transform we'll again discuss here for 1D case, for 1D signal, and then we'll see the 2D case. And 2D case is actually going to be applicable for the images. Now 1D case will be also applicable. We'll see that when we are transforming our rows and columns separately one by one to its equivalent representation in Fourier domain, then 1D case will be also applicable. Okay, so we'll see actually that both 1D and 2D, both the cases are applicable for us. Now in the case of DFT, what is going to be the input for our case? It is going to be regularly spaced discrete data values. Right? In earlier case, it was a continuous function, so continuous values you were supplying, but here, since we are talking about discrete case, so the input is going to be regularly spaced data values. We'll see, from the example it will be clear what we exactly mean by regularly spaced data values, but I think it is easy to understand from here that in place of saying that our function is, let's say, x square, we are going to say that our function is represented using some set of discrete values. Okay, and what is going to be the output for this this operation? The output is going to be same what we had earlier. We are going to do Fourier transform. So whether it's a discrete signal or the continuous signal, when you are performing Fourier transform, you are going to get the representation of the input signal in terms of frequencies in the Fourier domain, right? So or you can say that when you apply this, you get Fourier transform of the given signal. Okay, and how we can get the discrete representation from the continuous formulation? So there are some very straightforward indications that we can get. So in the continuous domain, we were using integration. So in the discrete domain, there won't be any integration. So in place of integration, we will be using summation. Right? So if you just replace, So now we'll first discuss discrete Fourier transform for 1D case, and then we'll go for the 2D case. So now let us assume that there is a function fx defined in 1D, and the values that x is taking in the function fx, those values are ranging from 0 to n minus 1, which basically mean that your function fx is defined for f0 f1, f2, f3, so on until fn minus 1. Right? So you have total n values. With the help of n values, function fx is defined. Okay. Now, given the function fx, its discrete Fourier transform in 1D is given by this formula, which says that Fourier transform of fx is going to be fu, and this is going to be equal to 1 by n sigma x equal to 0 to n minus 1 fx e to the power minus j2 pi ux divided by n, where u is also going to range from 0 to n minus 1. That means you are going to get total n different frequencies. Okay. Now, if you compare this formula with the case which we had for the continuous case, you will find that there are some differences here. One obvious difference is that you have replaced integration by the summation, but there are a few more other differences as well. For example, if you see that formula, you will not find this 1 by n term there. Okay, and similarly, earlier it was minus j2 pi ux. There was nothing. There was nothing in the denominator, but here you have 1 by n terms here. So I mean, in the denominator also you have n. Okay, so these are the two differences. One is this 1 by n term is appearing here, and you can say that 1 by n term is also appearing in the exponent. Okay, its equivalent inverse DFT is given by this formula. So from fu we are getting the original signal fx, and fx becomes equal to summation u equal to 0 to n minus 1 capital fu e to the power minus j2 pi ux by n, and x is again going to take values from 0 to n minus 1. Now if you see this, again you can compare this formula with the original formula, and you find that in this case 1 by n term is not there. Only in the exponent you have 1 by n term. Right? So in the case of Fourier transform, you have 1 by n term here, and in 1 by n term here too. And in the case of inverse Fourier transform, you have only 1 by n term in the exponent. Okay. And I think these formulas are simple to remember. So this is the discussion on that. So 1 by n factor you are getting in front of the in case of Fourier transform, 1 by n factor is appearing at two places, in the exponent as well as in front of the expression, and in the inverse discrete Fourier transform, this 1 by n term is only coming in the exponent. Now there's another important thing that we need to remember. We'll find that in different textbooks there are different kinds of representations being used. In some cases you will find that this 1 by n factor that you have in front of here in DFT, some of the authors use it actually here in front of inverse DFT. Okay, so in that case you will find that this 1 by n will not be here, 1 by n will be here. In some of the textbooks you may find even that they are using 1 by root n here and 1 by root n here. And we'll see that basically the ultimate goal is that whatever you are getting, if you multiply these coefficients, the ultimate value should be 1. Ultimate value should be 1 by n. So whether you are keeping 1 by n here and 1 here, or 1 here and 1 by n here, if you multiply them, you are going to get 1 by n. As I said, if you are keeping 1 by root n here and 1 by root n here, in that case also you are going to get total 1 by n. Right? So this different representations are also used by different textbooks, so you should not be confused. Okay, fine. Now for every discrete Fourier transform, we get an inverse transform. So if we put these two things together, that means fu and fx together, this is called Fourier transform pair. So we basically mean that fu is the Fourier transform of fx, and fx is the inverse Fourier transform of fu. Okay, so we have the formula of fu like this here, and we have the formula of fx like this here. So fu fx, since in this fu you are using fx, so this fx fu pair makes a discrete Fourier transform pair, right? And if you let's say want to check whether the two given discrete Fourier transform and inverse transform, whether they are the transform pair or not, then you just put this value of fx in this expression, and then do little mathematics. You will find that if this fu has been obtained from the same fx, then fu from the left side, which you have here, this will be same as what you are going to get from the right side. That means if you replace this fx by this fx and do some mathematics on this, then you'll find that the right hand side will also turn out to be fu. Okay, you can just get this more details from here. So you have fu expressed like this. This is a simple formula of discrete Fourier transform for given function fx. Now let's say the inverse Fourier transform is defined like this, where fx is equal to this, where again you are using the same fu that you had in the previous case. So now if you are saying that this makes a discrete Fourier transform pair, then if you replace this fx formulation that you have here and put it here and solve it, you will find that the right hand side will be equal to fu. Okay, and this is very simple to do. I mean, you can take it as your homework. Okay, now let us talk about discrete Fourier transform in 2D case. So again, to remember this formula, you can compare them with the previous case where you had 2D discrete, 2D transform for the continuous case. So if you compare this formula with the continuous case, there we had two integrations. So here we have two summations, one for each dimension. And in place of as we saw in case of 1D discrete case, we had some coefficient at the in front of the expression. Here also we are going to have this this coefficient, which is 1 by nm in front of this expression. So if you compare with the 2D case, in 2D this was not there, and similarly in the 2D case you had just xu or vy. We did not have xu by n or vy by m. Right? There was nothing in the denominator here. Okay, so these are the two differences. Exactly these differences are same as we had in case of discrete 1D case. Okay, its equivalent inverse DFT is given by this formula, where again as in the case of 1D, we did not write any coefficient here, so here also there is no coefficient written. Only in the exponent, xu is divided by n and vy is divided by m. Okay, so in case of inverse, only the change is in terms of exponent. But in case of Fourier transform, there are two places where the change is there with respect to the continuous case. One change is here in the exponent, and another change is with respect to this coefficient that we are using in front of this expression. Okay. Now, if let's say our image becomes square, our image becomes a case where n and m are same, right? Like it's like a number of rows and number of columns are same. So we can assume that in case of n cross m image, we have or n cross, in general, if you are talking about the function, then we had a function of size n cross m earlier. Now we have function of size n cross n, because n and m are same. Okay. So when n and m become same, one direct formulation you can get from here, where you just replace n by m. So what is the expression you are going to get? You are going to get here 1 by n square, and similarly here you are going to get xu plus vy divided by n. Okay, what you are going to get here? We have not written any coefficient here, so it is not going. We are not going to get anything here. But here it is going to be xu plus vy divided by n. Okay, and obviously this ranges are going to change because m has become n now. So in place of having summation for y equal to 0 to m minus 1, we will have summation from y equal to 0 to n minus 1. Right? So these are the changes we are going to see. Now, if you remember, in the 1D case, I said that there are different notations people use. Ultimate goal there was that if you multiply this coefficient and this coefficient, the value should be 1 by n. Right? So now here the objective is to get 1 by n square when you multiply these two terms. So to make the formula a little simple to remember, in most of the notations you will find that 1 by n is used, in case of 1 by n square being used only here and nothing here, majority of the authors you will find that they use 1 by n here and 1 by n here. So this becomes like a bit symmetric, so it is simple to remember, right? But it does not make any difference. You can keep 1 by n square here and nothing here, or 1 by n here and 1 by n here. Okay, or third case is also possible. You can just keep 1 here and 1 by n square in the other case. Okay. So in our discussion, we are going to use, whenever n and m are going to be same, we are going to use this kind of notation, right? Where 1 by n factor is kept in case of forward DFT, and 1 by n factor is kept in case of inverse DFT. Okay. Oh. Yeah, and normally the sine and cosine functions that are, so sine and cosine waves that we are going to use here, they are sometimes referred as basis functions, right? So this whole Fourier transform is based on sine and cosine waves. So those sine and cosine waves are referred as basis functions here. Okay. Now if you analyze the 2D case of Fourier transform, and let's say try to find out what is f00. Okay. So what is f00? Can you just tell here in this expression? F00 means you are putting u0 and v0. So when u becomes 0, v becomes 0, what is going to be this term? This term will become 1, right? So this is nothing but this double summation for fxy, right? And what is, in case, if let's say this fxy is representing our image, then what is fxy represents in our image? Fxy represents a brightness value or a gray value at location xy. So what we are doing when we are making this 1 and saying that this summation becomes sigma x equal to 0 to n minus 1, y equal to 0 to n minus 1 fxy, this is nothing but summing all the intensities. Right? You are taking all the possible combinations of x and y, and for that fxy, for that xy, whatever fxy you have, that is the intensity. So this f00 is nothing but, it is actually the average of all the intensities that you have in your image. Okay. So if you compute the f00 for any f00 from any DFT, you will see that it will be nothing but the average of all the brightness, and this is called, in case of images, this is called the DC component. Why we say DC? Because it doesn't have any complex term. This is going to be always a real value. Okay. So this is referred as DC component. So f00, whatever we get, that is referred as DC component, and that is nothing but the average of all the brightness values. And if you see here, in these formulas, x and y are the variables from the original domain. And what are u and v? These are the variables in the Fourier domain. So in the Fourier domain, what are our variables? Our variables are frequencies. So we can say that x and y are the spatial domain variable, and u and v, which are the Fourier domain variable. So this u and v, they represent frequencies. Okay. If you plot for any given Fourier transform, if you plot the frequencies, you will see that 0 for u equal to 0, v equal to 0, you will find a frequency here. And similarly, this will be n minus 1, and this will be n minus 1. So when you move from this side to this side, frequency increases. When you move from this side to this side, frequency increases. Okay. So you can say that this, whatever you have at n minus 1 comma n minus 1, that is the highest frequency that you can have. Okay. So f00, as I said, represent DC component, and similarly fn minus 1 comma n minus 1, it represents the highest frequency that you have in your image. Okay. Now the question comes, how to visualize the DFT. So little bit this we discussed in the last class also. So whenever we want to visualize the Fourier transform, since it is a complex quantity, there are some possible ways. You can't plot that. All the real and imaginaries simultaneously and analyze it. So there are two ways we can actually plot the DFT and then analyze it. One is plotting a real and imaginary component separately. Okay. If you have, let's say, obtained a Fourier transform which is a plus ib, you plot all a values separately and b values separately, and then see what you find there in those plots. Another is with the help of magnitude. This we discussed in the last class. So whatever Fourier transform you get, you just take the magnitude of it and then plot it. And along with the magnitude, we also actually need the phase to analyze it properly. So one option is that we plot real and imaginary parts separately, and another option is to plot magnitude and phase separately and then analyze it. Okay, and most of the cases we'll find that magnitude will give enough information to us to analyze the signal. So now, most of the time we'll just plot magnitude and then analyze it. Okay. But when I say you need magnitude, sorry, yeah. So let us discuss this first case first. So when you are having a real and imaginary both parts, then only if you take these values and perform the inverse Fourier transform, you will get the original function. Okay. Similarly, if you have represented your DFT, a discrete Fourier transform for your 2D signal with the help of magnitude and phase, if you want to perform inverse transform and you want to get the complete value of your original signal, you need both magnitude and phase. Okay. For plotting, magnitude will give us good information, but if you want to get back the original signal from the Fourier transform, then in that case we need magnitude and phase both. So either we need real and imaginary component to reconstruct our original signal back from the Fourier domain, or we need magnitude and phase of that Fourier transform to get the original signal back from the Fourier domain to a spatial domain. Okay. Yeah. So normally, as I said that to visualize the transform, we only take the modulus of or the magnitude of the Fourier spectrum and plot it. And as we discussed in the last class that these values are very small values. So to enlarge them, we take their log, and so that they become stretched. You can see that from this example. So this was the original image, and for this image, the Fourier transform was this one, which is, I mean, like you can say it is concentrated at a very small area. So now when you take the log of it, it becomes little stretched, and you can analyze it more, I mean, accurately. For example, if you see here, you are not able to see that there's some rays like this coming out of this. But if you, I mean, these whatever I highlighted here, they are not visible here. But when you take the log of them, log of these values, you see that these more details are visible here. Okay. Now, there's one more factor that I think I missed, I did not tell in the previous discussion, and that is this C. It is a constant, so some kind of stretching you will get by taking the log, but let's say you want to scale your values further, so then you can choose a suitable C, let's say C equal to 10, so then you will get a kind of scaling, but if you change C equal to 10 to 20, then you will get more scaling, right, more stretching, or more, in some sense you can say more brightness values here. So by suitably choosing your C, you can have better and better visualization of your Fourier spectrum. Okay, and one I think I explained in the last class that this one is actually we are adding here so that when FUV, this magnitude of FUV is 0, in that case also your function is defined. Okay, so just to handle that case, you have one here. Okay. Yeah. So just to reiterate few things that I already mentioned. So when you want to reconstruct your signal from Fourier domain to spatial domain, either you need imaginary and real components of the Fourier transform, or another option is that you can do it with the help of magnitude and phase. So if you have the magnitude spectrum of the Fourier transform, then you also need to have phase spectrum to construct the original signal back from the Fourier domain to a spatial domain. Okay. And normally, as you see in the previous slide, whatever the values we are getting in case of Fourier domain, they are having a larger range as compared to the spatial domain. So we will see that here they will be normally represented with the help of floating values, right? In the case of, so if you compare the values of fxy and fuv, fxy was always integer. I mean, if you're talking about the images, fxy was the intensity or the gray value, which is, let's say, if your image is having intensity between 0 to 255, so it was some value between 0 to 255. But in this case, whatever FUV you are going to get, that is going to be a floating value normally. Okay, and x and y and u and v, they both are going to be integer because they are talking about some indices.